All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to everybody here, and welcome to everybody up on Zoom. It's been exciting to be here today as opposed to up there where I usually am. And thank you for that wonderful song, Louise and Mark. It was, it's about time. We almost can now start reaching out again and touching each other's hands. And it's going to be a wonderful day that we can do that. So thank you, Louise, for choosing that song. Perfectly in tune with my theme today, too. So I'd like to begin. This is our theme for this month is a wise use of power. And I'd like to begin with a story that I got from this book. It's called Humankind, A Hopeful History. And it is a wonderful thing to read right now because it's very reaffirming of what we are believing, we hope we believe, about the world. And it goes back through a bunch of history and a bunch of things that have been declared by experts to be the case and shows that they're not, and that actually the truth is something totally different. So I highly recommend it. I'm going to start with a story from this book. It's a story about South Africa. And it begins, it's a story of two twin brothers. They were born in 1933. And one of them was named Constand, and the other one was named Abraham. And they have a last name, but I have absolutely no idea how to pronounce it. So I'm just going to call them Constand and Abraham. Identical twins, grew up together all the way through the year, their 18th year, went to school together, were best friends, very close. And when they got to be 18, their family said, we only have enough money to send one of you to college. And so Constand said, Abraham, you should go because you're the smarter one. So Abraham went off to Pretoria, went to college, ended up studying in the United States, did a whole lot of traveling around the world, and Constand ended up going into the military. Well, fast forward many, many years later, Abraham has come back to South Africa and has realized, because of all of his world travel and study, that the system of apartheid is not right. And so he is working actively to change that. And Constand, on the other hand, has become the supreme commander of all of the military forces of South Africa and is absolutely convinced that apartheid is right and has been defending it all of his life. Well, Constand retires in 1986. And of course, the two brothers, identical twins, have not been talking to each other all this time because these are very different views of the way their country should work, and so they have not been very close. So as I said, Constand retired in 1986. In 1990, Nelson Mandela was freed from prison. Now, one thing I neglected to mention was that Constand and Abraham were the sons of an Afrikaner who, when he was a young boy, was in a concentration camp that the British had because there was an uprising of the Afrikaners because of the oppression of the British right around the turn of the century. And their father had been in that concentration camp and had seen his brother and sister die in the arms of his mother. So they had a felt history of what it was like to be oppressed by another entity. And Constand and the Afrikaners that he knew were convinced that the freeing of Nelson Mandela was going to lead to something similar to what their father had witnessed and tried to fight against with the British occupation. So there was a rally on May 7th in 1993 in which 15,000 Afrikaners were all in a stadium together. And they were all saying, oh my gosh, we have to rise up against this. We cannot allow this election to go forward. We need to have someone who can lead us to help us overcome this terrible situation that we know is going to occur if Nelson Mandela gets to run in this country and we elect a mixed government. And who stepped forward to be that leader? Constand. Constant stepped forward, and he was well recognized by everyone, and people thought, yes, this is what we need. Within 2 months, they had drafted 150,000 armed white Afrikaners to their cause, 100,000 of whom were ex-military, and they were planning their attack. How were they going to prevent this election from going forward? Well, Abraham, who had been part of a political party who was running on the ticket of trying to get rid of apartheid, he felt this tension building, and he could tell that this was a situation that had the potential to become very much out of control, very dangerous. And so in July of that year, 1993, Abraham went to his brother Constant, and he asked his brother, would you please, before you go forward, would you please just try to come and meet with and talk with Nelson Mandela? And this was an amazing thing, because this was the 9th time that Nelson Mandela had reached out to try to talk to Constant. And Constant had always said no, but this time it was his brother who asked him to come. And so in August, unbeknownst to anybody else in the whole world and the whole country, Constant and Abraham went to Nelson Mandela's house. And the story that Constant tells about it is that they came to the door expecting that there would be a servant who would let them in. But no, Nelson Mandela was there at the door himself to let them in. And they went into the parlor and they sat down, and Nelson Mandela said, would you like some tea? And Constant said, yes, I would. And Nelson Mandela poured the tea and put in the milk and the sugar that he wanted, that Constant wanted, and handed it to him. And Constant realized that this is a person just like me. And they started to talk, and they negotiated over time, and within about a month they had come to an agreement. And Constant did not lead his 150,000 strong military force in any kind of military operation to prevent that election. It was held, and we all know what happened after that. Nelson Mandela became the president of South Africa, and he was welcomed by a vast majority of the people who no longer saw him as a terrorist. Well, what was Nelson Mandela's superpower? Nelson Mandela's superpower, from this book, is he chose to see the good in people who 99 people out of 100 would have judged to have been beyond redemption. That was Nelson Mandela's superpower. What a wise use of power. What a wonderful, wise use of power. And you know that this author goes on to say, you know, in campaigns of nonviolence, like the one that Nelson Mandela was involved in, there is one ingredient that is essential. It is self-control. Mandela in prison became a master at self-mastery, at being able to keep a cool head, and he tried to make his inmates see that the other guards were people too, and that they had just been poisoned by the system. And that was how he saw Constant, as an honest, loyal, and brave man who spent his life fighting for a regime that he believed in, and that allowed them to be able to find their common ground and go forward. So self-mastery, that is the power to choose love and not fear, over and over and over again, even in situations where it would seem like in prison that fear would be the appropriate response. No, self-mastery is choosing love. Charles Fillmore said that man is the power of God in action, the power to see God in everyone. So if that's the case, so what is our common belief about human nature? What do we really think that our nature is like? And this, again, in this book, there's an interesting experiment about that. And it goes like this. Imagine an airplane makes an emergency landing and breaks into 3 parts. As the cabin fills with smoke, everybody inside realizes, oh, we've got to get out of here. So, how does this work? On planet A, the passengers turn to their neighbors to ask if they're okay. Those needing assistance are helped out of the plane first. People are willing to give their lives even for perfect strangers. On planet B, everyone's left to fend for themselves. Panic breaks out. There's lots of pushing and shoving. Children, the elderly, and people with disabilities get trampled underfoot. Now, the question is, which planet do we live on? About 95% of the time, people think that we live in planet B, according to the studies that have been done. But the truth is, we live on planet A. And that's what this book is all about. It goes through over and over and over again, pointing out all the times that the press and the media have revealed this story of planet B, but in truth, what actually has been happening is planet A. So anyway, can't get into all the details of what's in here, but it's an exciting book to read. And it's one that, of course, is very, very in touch with what we believe in Unity. We believe that everyone has the spark of the divine within them. And it's so wonderful. It's so wonderful. It's like when science discovers something that corresponds to what Unity believes in. This is very nice to find that there's somebody out there writing about what we believe in being true. Makes me feel good about not being a lone voice in the wilderness sometimes when we can get that kind of affirmation. But how do we come to trust this divine power inside of us? Because obviously a whole lot of people don't, and certainly the media doesn't, since they keep portraying pictures of the opposite. So how do we come to trust that power within, that sense of God that we believe is within everyone? Well, my experience, particularly in the last couple of years, has been that I have to, in order to get to the next level of understanding, I have to let go for myself of using the word God. I find that the word God has so many connotations to it from my childhood that it is misleading for me to keep believing in it. There's just an example here that Paul Hasselbeck has in his book that just hit me really strongly. And as he said, he laughed when he discovered it. He said, okay, so an image came to me one night while guiding a meditation for my study group, Heartland Unity Church. As I said the phrase, "We are created in the image and likeness of God," an image popped onto the screen of my mind of a giant hand with a pastry bag, squirting out little globs of cookie dough, shaped like people. And once it was squirted out, it was finished. I had to control my laugh that naturally bubbled up in response to that image, because in that very instant I realized that the truth is God is creating itself in its image and likeness as you and me in this present moment, and in each successive moment. It's not a static one-time event, like the Sistine Chapel where the finger reaches out and then that's done. No, it's not. It's the source of our true power because it is an ongoing, ever-present creation that happens all the time. And it wasn't until I read this book I thought to myself, oh yeah, when I think of God, I think Sistine Chapel. I think of the cookie dough, little thing squirt out, there you are. Once you get out of the cookie dough maker, you're on your own, and you can connect when you need it, but you're just kind of this independent entity. That's not the way it works. So how does it work? What can we do to help ourselves get past whatever limitations we may carry around in our own minds about what this concept is that we're trying to always be in touch with? And if it isn't going to be the word God, then what can we use that might help expand our capacity to imagine and to be in touch with what this is? So I like to use the word divine presence. And how do we imagine divine presence? Well, an analogy came to me that isn't perfect, but it certainly helped me a lot. And that is to think about, and I don't know how many of you remember this way back from your early days in school. I know you may not have ever had this experience, but how many of you have ever had a sheet of paper with a bunch of iron filings on it, and then you put a magnet underneath? Is that an image that makes sense to people? What happens to all those iron filings? Whew, they all line up into this beautiful, harmonious pattern. The thing about that analogy to me is that the magnet doesn't have to think about every single iron filing and go out and consciously say to itself, okay, now this one has to go at this angle, this one has to go at that angle. The magnet doesn't even have to do that. It's just this thing. It's just all-encompassing. Ah, yes, it knows. Bingo, and it happens. That, to me, was a very liberating concept to think about because, part of the notion of having God around is that our old image of this person, and so we tend to think, if it's a person, that it's like us. And, of course, we're limited in a lot of different ways. It'd be really hard to imagine a person being able to know exactly what angle to arrange each iron filing at, all at once, simultaneously. But see, that's why it's so nice to be able to think about something that goes past our limiting versions of what we think God is into this something else that's much more unlimited. Now, the other difficulty with this analogy, though, is that the iron filings all line up. But we as human beings, we have free will. So we can decide if we're an iron filing, I don't think I'm going to do that. And so we don't necessarily all line up. So it's that availability of free will that allows for us to be able to choose. And that's part of the plan, because it wouldn't mean anything if we didn't have any free choice. We need to be able to make this something that we choose to do and not just gets forced upon us by this magnet out there. But as an analogy, it really helped me to be able to say, okay, so I see this wonderful sense of harmony is there all the time, all over, and I don't need to be trying to imagine what it might take to be able to do that. It's just there. It's a presence that is there all the time. Well, why would we want to line up with this presence, though? Is there something about this presence that makes life better than everything would be without it? Well, Linda Marcella Whitsitt, in her book that we're reading right now, says that just this power, this magnet out there, is the force of harmony, unity, and love. And it leads us to shine, heal, and transform. Specifically, she says, spiritually, love is the gravitational center of life. All thought, feeling, and action get pulled toward love by the power of magnetism, harmony, and unity. So it's a power that knows how to align things in that direction of love. There's a whole book about power that was written by Paul Hasselbeck called Point of Power. And he too describes what this is, this presence that's within us. He describes it this way. When I become still and prayerfully go to the place in my awareness that I know I am one with God, I am in touch with love. I can remember that I am that love. When I am seeking guidance or spirit, I do not believe there is a being saying, Paul, do this, or Paul, do that. I believe what is happening is this pure love is merely vibrating within me. It is always vibrating within me, everywhere and in everything. As that love vibrates within, a divine alchemy occurs between its pure state of undifferentiated love and all the thoughts, ideas, beliefs, and attitudes that I hold. As a result of this vibrating together, I see or hear the guidance I need. I am not separate from that guidance. Love vibrates within me. It is me, in such a way that an answer is clear that would be the highest expression of love given the current combination of circumstances to guarantee the best and highest outcome. So this presence within us is perhaps an energy, a vibration. Michael talks about this sense of oneness pervading our being. Pervading our being. What an amazing concept to have our whole being be pervaded by this wonderful presence. We live and have our being in the presence of this presence. But how can we wrap our heads around something like that? It's hard to imagine what that might be. Well, I like to use a little bit of science at this point, and I like to imagine all of this at the level of atoms. And I suspect that science has gone way past where it was when I learned about science, but I have, and maybe you all have, this little vision of an atom. Remember, it's got a little nucleus, and it's got these little electrons that keep whizzing around, and they may have other ways of describing it now, but I'm sure that's still somewhat accurate. But the interesting thing about these atoms is that most all of the atom is space. It's the space in between the little nucleus and these whizzing atoms these whizzing electrons that go way out and way in and all over the place. Most of it is space. And so for me, that's where I imagine this presence to be, is in that space that's inside each atom, in every part of me and you and everything everywhere. That space is all filled with this presence. And that's how it permeates our being in every moment. And as Paul Hasselbeck said, creating always now in the moment, not just squirted out of a cookie cutter a long time ago. That presence is always there within us. That is the power that we have. And it is our growing awareness of that power that gives us the ability to be able to be and create and live and just be one with one another. It's the same presence. Well, I'd like to interrupt right now to do a meditation, and then I'll come back and do a little bit more as a closing. So let's just take this time to just allow ourselves to settle in, get comfortable. Allow ourselves to just come completely to a point of rest. Let our physical bodies just relax on that chair we're sitting on. And allow ourselves to go within, knowing that everything on the outside will be just fine for the next few minutes, and that we can allow ourselves to go within. Allow ourselves to go to that place of peace, that place of stillness, that place where we can feel and allow ourselves to know that we are the presence. We have this presence in every part of our being. That we have in every atom of our being this presence of life. We have in every atom of our being this presence of love. We have in every atom of our being this nurturing presence. This presence that cherishes us in every moment. This presence is there in every atom, all the time. Creating wholeness, creating peace, nurturing and cherishing every part of us. Always there. Always there for guidance. Always there for peace. Always there connecting us to each other and to the infinite source of all that is. When we are quiet and still, we allow this presence to fill not just those spaces in our atoms, but to fill all of our being and consciousness. Allowing us to know deeply that we are spiritual beings, that we are created and creating in every moment from love and life, harmony, unity, goodness. Thank you, Spirit. Thank you, Presence, for being within us and around us, for being the light and the love that we are. And it is so. Amen. So I invite you to come back now to this room. Bringing that sense of connection and presence and love with you as you come back. Because we carry this oneness with us. We carry this presence with us all the time. It is the source of our power. Power is staying in the truth of who we are as we go through our day, of bringing this presence with us. Now, it doesn't guarantee that we never have any difficulties, because that's not its purpose. We will have difficulties in our lives. But this presence within allows us to chart a path through those difficulties that is based on love and harmony, and to bring us out the other side. And so, we are awakening now. all of us in this room, all of us on Zoom, we're all here because we are aware, and we're becoming more aware in every moment of this presence within us and the power that we have. But we are living in a time of chaos, very much like the times in the story that I told at the beginning about the two brothers in South Africa. We are in a time of families that are split apart, of people who are fearful, and they're banding together to try to control others who they see as being different and threatening. And like the story of Nelson Mandela, a wise use of power at this time is to affirm the goodness of everyone, to see the good in everyone. Power is how we express ourselves in the outer world. As Susan Gum said in our first Sunday on power, what are we contributing to the collective consciousness? Well, I invite you to use your power to affirm the goodness of humankind, to see the good in everyone, and to help others to see it too. Spiritually, we do this through prayer and meditation that helps us deepen our awareness and our alignment with this inner presence that does pervade every bit of our being. Outwardly, there are ways that we can do this that will help those around us also begin to be okay with the idea that humankind is actually good and wonderful. I'd like to just end with a couple of ideas out of this book from Humankind. 10 ideas that this fellow has come up with. And they're just kind of, how do we take this wonderful presence within and translate it into something we can do out in the outer world? So here are just 10 ideas on how to do that. When in doubt, assume the best. Think in win-win scenarios. Ask more questions. Train your compassion. Try to understand the other, even if you don't get where they're coming from. Love your own as others love their own, or in reverse, realize that others love their own the way you love your own. Avoid the news. Don't punch Nazis. And this one takes a little explanation. He's saying, it's when you see people that you feel like are on the other side of an enemy, return whatever energy you're getting from them with love and kindness, not more of what they're giving to you. This one, I think, is the most important one that I think of the series. Come out of the closet and don't be ashamed to do good. Because it's easy to let the pervasive cynicism that's in our culture overwhelm us, and so we just never do any of this stuff. But no, we need to get out there, do it boldly, as Jesus said, let your light shine, don't hide it under a bushel, and be out there and do these things. And the last one I want to read to you is in most of what's here, because I think it summarizes everything about what we can do for a wise use of power. He calls it, be realistic, the author of the book. But keep in mind, he's got a different definition of realism, and here it is. In truth, it's the cynic who's out of touch. In truth, we are living on planet A, where people are deeply inclined to be good to one another. So be this kind of realistic. Be courageous. Be true to your nature and offer your trust. Do good in broad daylight, and don't be ashamed of your generosity. It's time for a new realism. It's time for a new view of humankind. Namaste. So it's time now for us to do the prayer of protection. And I would invite everyone to stay where you are, and then after we finish it, I guess, do we usually stand up first and do the prayer? I haven't been here in person for so long. Just stay where we are? Okay. All right. So let us then say the prayer of protection. And I just, when you get up here, it's like everything goes blank. I know it's here somewhere. I should know it. I do know it. But the light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. And the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well.